I'm Suzi Landolfi, and welcome to Be Crazy Well. This is how I start, Scott. And I feel like I know you so well, and I've never met you. Like, this is the first time I've actually seen you.
No, I think this is like the second time we've seen each other, I think.
Maybe we did FaceTime once.
Once, yes.
Once, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just remember, I'm old. And you asked me how I was, and I said, I'm so good, it's disgusting. That's how good I am. No one should be this good. But I don't oftentimes say this because I don't have people in my life that I meet a lot that I can say this about. I met you under some of the worst circumstances. You were going through it. You deserve to go through it because of the shit you went through as a kid. And I was like, this guy can do this. You hit the ground running, working on yourself, deep breathing, doing the wellness practices, and creating the man you are today. Like, I've never seen anybody do it that quickly and that deeply. So I'm just going to start that way to tell you this. And that's not bullshit. I don't blow smoke up people's ass. I don't get that close to asses. So I don't do that. So I want you to know this. And I'm just going to tell people that they're listening to Be Crazy Well. And I know you are crazy well. I know I am too. So that's how you have to get to be a guest on the show, is you have to be crazy well. And we met through a wonderful organization that I'm the clinical director of called Merging Vets and Players. And
Yep.
part of the Chicago chapter. So here's what you get to do, because forever and ever, it's your story. It's your right. And I want you to share with everybody whatever you want to share about how we met. And then what happened, because everybody wants to know this. What happened that clicked on that switch that turned up that dimmer dial into greater well-being? That's what people want to know. They don't know how to do it. And you were like, at one time. Now you're
I guess to start is we met through Oscar, and he manages the MVP program in the Chicago chapter down here in Chicago. And I pretty much visit MVP every Wednesdays as much as I can. And we met through Oscar through a point in my life, I think like 2, maybe 3 years ago, going on maybe 3 now,
right,
where I was in a very dark place and I pretty much gave up. I had a 7-year relationship that went down the drain during that time, and just lost work, lost all hope, and just getting back on my feet felt very challenging. And I went through a very hard time, I should say, for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And we chatted numerous times throughout that time. And something clicked in my head. I knew that that wasn't me. It was a different side of me that I never thought would ever come to surface at any point in time. And what really kind of clicked in my head was I need to get back to how I used to be. I'm 33 now, and how I used to be back in my early mid-20s was very great. Mental space was very good, and on my road to doing good things. And
were you in the military at that time?
During which time?
The 20s. You said in the early 20s.
No, I got out of the Marine Corps at 23 years old, very young. So I had an 8-year contract, spent 4 years active duty, and then 1 year in the reserves, and spent the last 2 years in active reserves to finish off my 8-year contract that I signed originally.
So you got out, and then you were okay for a while.
Yes, absolutely. I was doing great. I was going to work full time during the day. I'm sorry, full time work in the afternoon, and then college full time in the mornings, and then work in the afternoon. And I was always at the gym, always working out, always trying to keep myself physical. Been in fairly good shape my entire life. Ever since I was a child, I've always been that way. Eating habits are always pretty good. And yeah, all through my 20s, I was great. Mentally, physically, emotionally, I felt really great. And all the way up until I was about, I would say, 28, 29 is when I started to slip. I started to have doubt in certain things. Um, my depression started coming through a lot more, being apart from, the camaraderie from being around veterans and just being around great people, all in all. And just trying to find my own family out in the world right now. I have very few friends, very, very, very small circle. Um, so yeah, great throughout the 20s, kind of went really down really fast too. It wasn't like this thing that kind of prolonged for a very long time either. It was very quick.
Yeah.
Within the first 2 months, I was so depressed. I would stay in the house all day, every day, and I just would not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Would not talk to anybody.
It's interesting how often I hear that story, and my sense is, and you and I both had what we would say challenging childhoods, challenging in ways where our parents struggled as well. And my dad struggles the same way yours does. So here's what's interesting. I was an overachiever as a kid. Like I did, and then I did fine too for a while. And I have almost the same story, that it was almost like I didn't realize I was on a shaky foundation because I looked so good. I was doing so good for so long. And then it just collapsed.
Mhm.
And it shocked me. So I didn't even know how to handle it at first because I had never really experienced that. My goal was just keep going, do more, all of that. But all that fear and sadness you talked about, your depression, anxiety and depression go together. It is bubbling up underneath like a volcano. And that shocked me. And I didn't have a lot of what I would say stable support from my family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, mine absolutely. Mine was very similar to that. I didn't have any support from any family. None from my siblings, none from my parents. Um, and it was very hard for me to kind of comprehend as to what was really going on. And because I was always there for my family, I was always there to be that strong rock male figure in my family.
Yeah.
I noticed, in the generations of family that I've seen, and I got to, be young enough to see my great grandparents be alive for, up until I went into the service actually. So
Wow.
for 16, 17 years of my life, I got to see my father's grandparents up until that point, and then they passed away in their early 100s. And just seeing the generation that got passed down from time to time, I was treated very differently from my family. I was a very big outcast. A lot of my family, especially my grandparents, had high hopes for me. They noticed that I would never follow my parents' footsteps. And pretty much when I observe, I'm a very observant person. So when I look at my parents and I look at, my siblings and my dad, they pretty much some people, I guess, would consider looking at their parents like, dang, they're my role models. But I never got that opportunity or that privilege to look at my parents in that format.
Yeah.
So, and when I looked through that or looked at them, it was more of like a what not to do situation.
Right.
Uh, they
And
taught me
yet,
what not to do.
and yet you're getting the effects of it. So as good as you are, and that's my story too. They could lean on me. I did a lot. I was the kid that achieved and all of that, because I didn't get it from my siblings either, and I didn't get it from my dad. My mom somewhat, but even with my mom, she leaned on me at 10 years old instead of me being able to lean on her, right? So you're right, there's generational trauma, and we're the outlier. We're the outlier because we're not doing the generational trauma, right?
Right.
So
It's like a social norm almost.
right, that's right. That's right. So what was interesting when I met you and I heard your story, and I met you at a time that you were absolutely at a place that I remember being. So I always tell people there's 5 levels of anger. And anger comes from fear and sadness. You and I have talked about. There's irritation, which I have every day. I have some form of irritation every day. Frustration, which usually happens at least once a day. Anger, rage, and murder suicide. I've had and been in all 5. I didn't kill her, but I had the knife at her throat at 17 years old. And if she had just leaned forward, I would not be talking to you right now because she had attacked my mother. So to me, that is when you know that childhood trauma, that us having to be always the one, we can't hold that. It's not fair, it's not real, and we've got big holes in our foundation. At least
It's very life draining
it
after a
is.
while.
It absolutely is.
And you start to question your capability of being that type of role model for somebody, and then they kind of just, rip it away from you.
Yeah.
It's very disheartening. It's very cruel in my understanding. As I think it's very cruel to do to somebody. So yes, everything's very different now, though, and I would agree that I'm irritated too every day. I think it's more of irritated towards people who don't, or I wouldn't say they don't want to, but they choose not to change, or they choose not to do certain things to make their lives any better. Um, and you can't really force that upon anybody. You have to really want that and do a lot of soul searching. You have to, in my instance, I had to put myself away. I admitted myself, and for a whole month, and found out that even when I was admitted in the VA, and as soon as I got out, I said, this has to change. This is not me. I have my own home. I have my own dog. I have my own vehicles. I have a lot. I have some pretty good, decent life that I'm living as of right now, and I did not want to go down that rabbit hole. And it went so quick. I was so confused, and I was very lost. And it took you, Oscar, and a few other people to kind of get into my head, and then eventually you guys just kind of let me be, and I had to figure it out on my own. It was either I chose to do the work or not.
Yeah. Oh man, you're so speaking. So this idea that first of all, you had the courage, or like we say in Boston, you had the balls to ask for help and to put yourself somewhere, much like how you did joining the military. You put yourself in the military, right? You went and found a place, a way to be of service, to have camaraderie, all of that. And that was a great choice at 17 for you, considering what you weren't getting. Okay, considering what you were getting. So you did that, which is so hard. I mean, just to admit, it was horrible for me to admit that I needed help because I was the helper, right? This was before I was a therapist. So I'm just always struck by the people that said, nope, I just called the VA and say, take me,
Yeah.
I'm here, take me, take me. And then you come out and it takes a while. So for you as an overachiever, someone that learns things so quickly and does things so well, did it surprise you how hard it was to do these wellness practices, to believe in yourself, to be committed to you?
I would say it was difficult, but not as difficult as I thought it was going to be,
Oh,
honestly. I am a lucid dreamer, and I did a lot of meditation during that time. So when I would meditate, and sit there and meditate for, I remember meditating for, about 2 hours, and I accidentally fell asleep during my meditation, but I ended up lucid dreaming during that time. And I found that I was able to kind of manipulate my surroundings while I was dreaming, and kind of figure out what was going on in my subconscious. And I kind of like reached basically into my subconscious level part of my brain, and I was able to kind of really understand what was going on in my head a little bit, and understand that that was not me. Um, being that really dark, horrible person was not me, and I really had to do a lot of reflection. And when I meditate every day for 30, 45 minutes, or however long it was, um, I found more and more of myself. I started asking myself why. Anytime I had a question that brought up in my head, I would ask myself why. I'd answer the question, then I would follow again with another why, until I found the answer. And sometimes you'll find those answers that you really don't want to hear, but it's absolutely necessary for you to hear it, because what's really going to wake you up. And like I said, either you choose to do it or you choose not to. And it was a very eye opener. I'm very shocked that it didn't take as long as I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to take longer. I thought I was going to be in another state of depression for like another year or two, or probably longer. Who knows? Was I going to, have suicidal thoughts again? Was I going to stay in the house? And I chose to get out of the house, do more walks with my dog, meditate more, self-reflect on things that I used to do that made me happy in life, put myself around people who really tried to encourage me, and instead of bringing me down. And I questioned myself. Even right now, I still question myself, but it's a good questioning, because I have to do it. There's questions that are still unanswered, and it's a journey that I'm still going through, and I need to continue on doing what I'm doing. And I'm hoping that in the near future, I'm doing something somewhere not here in Chicago, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we're ready for you here in California. So you and I have talked about that. I am struck by the idea of the subconscious. And what I oftentimes say to people is most of what you think about yourself and feel about yourself was either done to you or told to you. So some of those thoughts that you have and feelings you have about yourself aren't even yours. Like when my dad said, I wish you were never born, that's not my thought. So when I put myself down, or I'm depressed, or I think I don't belong here, I make a mistake and I go, well, that's awful. No, not necessarily. So I'm struck by how you were able to go deeper. I'm also struck. I say this all the time, Scott. I don't care. I don't give a shit about what you think sometimes as a therapist, and I don't give a shit about how you feel. Here's what I care about. I care that you go do different to be different. So even if you don't feel like it, you don't think you want to do it, you go do it anyway. You are the poster child for that. You were like, okay, I don't feel like going for a walk, I'm going for a walk. I don't feel like meditating, I'm going to meditate. I don't feel like going to, MVP, I'm going. So in other words, you didn't allow those thoughts and feelings. Most people, you were talking about choice. Most people get held hostage by their thoughts and feelings, and they never get to that point of go do regardless. And now the science tells us that when you physically do something, that has a better chance and will change your thoughts and feelings quicker than anything else, including meditation.
It's easier to not do anything. It's easier to not do anything, though, Susie. I think that's why people are programmed to not do anything.
Yeah.
You have to really think about who you are as a person, and just do it. You don't feel like cooking, cook. You're tired of being unhealthy, cook more. Educate yourself more. You don't feel like reading. Honestly, Susie, I used to hate reading. I despised reading when I was a kid. I dreaded it all the time. And the past 2 years, I would say that I have read more books than I've read in my entire life. And I really started to enjoy reading more. even picking up a book once a day for an hour, or reading a chapter a day in any book that I have that I'm reading currently. So you got to do the things that you don't feel like doing, because those are when you start to feel uncomfortable inside, and you get that feeling of uncomfortability. I think that's the universe really telling you to just go do it. Life is not supposed to be easy. Life is hard. And in order to become the person that you really want to be, you need to put those feelings aside and just do it. Otherwise, you're never going to know what it feels like to actually be proud of yourself. If you don't just do it, you got to do it.
Gotta do it. That's where Nike got it right. Nike got that one right. I mean, their prices are wrong, but their slogan was right. It's funny when you talked about, reading, and I say to people all the time, reading Twitter doesn't count. Reading the directions of the video game doesn't count, although I do appreciate that there is some reading involved in that as I watch my grandson. And I go, you can play as long as you read the directions. You read the directions and I'm happy.
Just books.
Yeah, just books really count. That's what happens, however. Have you ever thought of writing a book, Scott?
When I was in the service, I would journal a lot.
That's right.
I would journal a lot. That's something I'm really forcing myself to get back into even now. Putting my thoughts down at the end of the night and kind of just emptying out my brain at the end of the night, so I can make sure that I go to bed with an empty mind and just be at peace. And then when I wake up, I am refueled. I don't have anything on my mind other than the task that's at hand. I used to journal a lot in the service, every day actually. I still have those writings and journals that I would write into from the time I was in overseas and when I could write. And I really fell off of that because I thought that just by subconsciously thinking those thoughts would just self-talk my way out of it. And it ended up not working. I know some people that could do that, but I've realized for me, writing things down is really nice. And writing my own book, I don't know. I never really thought of it. Would I like to come up with something like that? Yeah, probably. I think so. I think I would be a very encouraging and very enlightening book for anybody who deals with depression, anyone who has had struggles with their parents, their friends, and has trying to like compare. And I wouldn't say compare, but kind of. Yeah, I guess you can say compare.
I love what you just did right now. You took your time and you thought, because words matter. And what you just did was something I wish more people would do. You talk about self-reflection. You just did it. So thank you for that. You're like a role model of like, okay, you self-reflect and go, no, wait a minute. Can you imagine if people did that in an argument and said, oh, no, wait a minute, I don't want to say that. Give me a second.
No, you can't do that though, Suzi, because people are too hyper-stimulated. They don't know how to pause, maybe think about what you're going to say, because your mind's going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to say things you really don't want to even say or don't even really mean. You got to really take a pause and really conjure up what you're going to, think and say, and kind of it's easier to succumb to what you feel and just retaliate, revert and reflect.
Right.
And that's something I've learned over time, because I used to do that a lot when it comes to trying to have proper dialogue with somebody, even my family. I couldn't have a genuine conversation with my family without people interrupting each other, people talking over one another. As soon as someone says something they don't like, they have to, retaliate. on what they said and kind of like bring them down. It's conversation to me is very stressful, but at the same time, I thoroughly enjoy it. I learn so much about human behavior. I learn so much about how people react to certain things, even for myself. And conversation, I just having dialogue with somebody is very, very stressful, but it's very rewarding because you learn something. You should learn something from a conversation. I have learned when I'm talking to even to someone I've never met before, I've learned to just shut my mouth. Just shut your mouth, Scott. You don't, sometimes they're going to say things that you really like, really enjoy, and you have to really try to hold yourself back from kind of talking over them or putting your 2 cents in. Just shut your mouth and listen. Listen for once instead of, I always like to say, I don't like to have conversations with people who listen to respond. I only like to have conversations with people who listen to understand.
Yeah.
So it's I learn better that way. I don't like to when I once I start to have conversation with you and you start to just retaliate off of something you don't like that I said, I kind of just turn the other shoulder. I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
It's very immature, and if you can't, a lot of people don't like what other people say. I think it's like you said, it's harder to just do the things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So even just conversation itself is very hard.
It's interesting when you said shut your mouth, Scott. I thought, oh, what a great title for his book.
I would always have those arguments too. I was at a very young age in my very early 20s. I would always be that person to just as soon as I didn't like what someone said, I would always try to speak over them. Always try to get my 2 cents in.
Well,
And
that's how
I've
you were
pushed.
trained in your
Yes.
family. That's how you were trained. I say childhood is training. You were
Hmm.
trained in the military and you were trained way be your first basic training was your childhood.
Oh yes, absolutely. And it's a big eye opener
Yeah.
on how you're programmed as a child, and you can tell by the way you grew up, by the way you're programmed by your parents. And if your parents couldn't have proper dialogue or conversation with one another, with my parents, anytime they get in an argument, they never knew how to resolve the argument. They would just kind of brush it over their shoulder, go to sleep angry. And I never got to see as a child like my parents resolving an argument from the day before or a week before. It was like they try to hold on to something.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were programmed too to just kind of hold all that in, and then it is justifiable later on when you get to throw it in someone else's face. To them, it was justifiable, and to me, I thought I've just seen that as a kid. I can tell internally, I felt like that something was wrong. Like there's no way that this is how life as a human is going to be growing up. So I don't like to go to bed angry, and especially when I have a conversation with somebody, and if we don't disagree on something, we come back and resolve it. Um, I don't like to leave things. I don't like to leave the ground disturbed. I gotta keep it smooth and put it back into place. And a lot of people don't like certain things, and I say a lot of controversial things as well sometimes, but um, I'm still learning as a human. I'm still 33. I'm not that old yet. I'm still pretty young.
Yes, you are.
Even when I'm 60, I'm never gonna say I'm 60 years old. I'm gonna say I'm 60 years young. You know, human beings are not meant to be old. We're still young.
Right. We're meant to be wise, though, and there are, unfortunately, not enough people who want to continue that growth into wisdom. I love being my age. I mean, I believe I'm 74 years young. I feel that, and I live it though. and I honor it. And I'm still making those connections that you're talking about. I'm still reflecting and understanding what happened to me, how it affected me, and what I get to do. I loved how you said, this was brilliant. You said, the journaling is emptying out the day. It's like, I always go pee before I go to bed because I know I better empty that bladder. I'm going to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning. So why, you know what I mean? That idea of emptying something of that day, there's nothing you can change about it. It's over. And to empty that and to give your brain and your mind, your heart, your soul, an emptiness, the Buddhists call that, to have an empty mind is a good thing. So I love how you express things. The metaphors are great, Scott. We got a couple of minutes more, and I know that we're going to come back to you. We're going to come back to you because you still are on this journey, and I want to hear more about what it is that you're doing. Can you share probably the most important? I know you mentioned meditation. Is there anything else that you mentioned journaling? You've always kept in shape, so I know you're physical. You have a dog. Anything else, any other wellness practice that helps you keep that solid grounding foundation for you physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, and financially?
Yes. The first thing that comes to mind is giving yourself grace and really learning to forgive yourself. And I think that my journey is about forgiving myself on things that I did, that I didn't do, things that were out of my control, that maybe something I could have changed.
Yeah.
And giving myself grace and gratitude that, the understanding that I'm not perfect and I can continue to practice and have the capability of waking up every day and changing something about me. So giving yourself a lot of grace is something that's like the first thing that comes to my mind, other than, going out and, go get a six pack, go do some social media and make millions of dollars, or go cook or something. I think for me, it's more of giving myself grace, understanding what I've been through and learning to accept that I can and will change.
We might have to change the title to your book. Give yourself grace. We might just have to do that. So, although I still live, shut your mouth, Scott.
They could be two separate books. I could come up with.
That's what I'm thinking. One for the people that need the grace, and the other one that just needs to shut up.
Yeah.
Listen, Scott,
Yeah.
it is a pleasure. Everybody, you've been listening to Scott Smith. He's got one of the most popular names, I think, in the telephone book that we don't have anymore. That's a very important name. I love names that are very similar, like that a lot of people have. I don't know if
They're
you've
common. It's a very common
It's a
name.
very common name, and you're very uncommon, which makes it even better. And we're going to revisit you. And
Okay.
I so appreciate you. And like I said, you were invited to be crazy well because you are. You're very well. And I so appreciate it. And our theme song, if you listen to it afterwards, and we'll probably post this in a week, it's called Be Your Best Self. It was written by Kalvin Love. And he gave me that song to use so that's another thing to do, is be your best self. That means do it, right? Just do it.
Yes.
Keep your
Yes. Well, I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh my God.
And
You're a blessing.
hopefully I'm hoping that this goes out to people who can maybe reflect and relate a little in a way, and I really appreciate the time that you've given me to be on with you and talk with you, and I'm looking forward to the next time that we do this again.
You will. Bless you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye,
You
everybody.
as well.
Be crazy well.
All right.
Love yourself in love. I'm talking about probably wanna